Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Their Radio. We have a special guest today. We focus a lot on music, and today, a musician, but also a writer, and one of the main reasons why you're here is to talk about your new book. But we have Marcus Clayton. How are you
Hello.
doing, Marcus?
I'm doing all right.
Cool. Welcome to West Adams. Have you been around this area before, West Adams?
Yeah, so I'm in the I'm getting a doctorate at USC, so I'm like down the street.
Yeah.
And we're talking a bit before this. So I play music or
Mm-hmm.
on and off with some friends. We come here to practice or come to this specific space
Yeah.
to practice every now and again because we're all spread out. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently in Downey, or bassist is in where is our bassist right now? He moves all the time, but he comes to West Adams all the time, and then our drummer's in Manhattan Beach.
Okay.
So this is like the midpoint.
Yeah.
So we'll come here, and it's good for me. I'm just like,
Yeah.
if I'm at work / school, I'm just like, yeah, I'll drive for 2 minutes. It's fine.
But-
Yeah,
No, go ahead. You were saying?
I know. We used to practice in like Culver City because our bassist was there, and me and drummer used to live in Long Beach, and we were too nice to say like, can we meet in the middle? Because like Culver City is far no matter where you're at. So, but yeah.
That's true. Well, where did y'all meet? Was it Long Beach? Because a little bit about the music you mentioned, the band, it's Tudors, right?
Yeah, yes,
That's the name
yes.
of the band,
Yeah.
Tudors. And I know you, as well as somebody else, is a professor, right, or works in education. What about the third person? Also,
We are actually all professors.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. We met. So I worked at a tutoring lab in Southwest College, or LA Southwest, and my boss at the time was like a married couple,
Okay.
and the dude ended up working somewhere else full time at El Camino.
Okay.
And he would just come to the lab, and we were like, well, you're not our boss anymore, so can we just talk shit with you? Like, and then he played drums, so we
that's sick.
we decided to jam at some point, and then our bassist we went to Cal State Long Beach for our masters, and so I met our bassist there, and we were like, hey, I play music, you play music, our former boss plays music, you want to play music? And so,
Was it your idea to get everyone together?
no, that's the funny. So there's a fourth guy.
Okay.
We're a 3-piece now, but there's a fourth guy who he was the glue for all of us. He was like, oh, like you all play music, I play guitar, let's all like get together and play. And
Yeah.
then we're like, yeah, let's do it. And then he ends up moving because after the program, or after the MFA program, he had student loans to pay, so he was like, I got to
rough.
go home
Yeah.
and not pay for rent in Long Beach.
Yeah.
And then so he was actually the one who gave us the name Tutors, because he thought it'd be funny because we all met in a tutoring lab and for English majors. So he was like, oh, and then like Henry VIII is a tutor, and it'd be so funny. And the rest of us were like, that's a stupid fucking name. Like, but we ended up keeping the name. I don't know why.
And it's funny because y'all are professors.
Yeah.
Too, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it's also kind of that the notion. But that's awesome. Music, and I know music is important. And before we dive into the book, I do want to ask you, because where I first met you was at Rearte, and this was around the time they released their Dryland issue 11. Now it's known as Sin Cesar, but at the time I remember you read your I believe you had a short piece in that specific edition. What do you remember about that time? First of all, how did you get into poetry? Because poetry and writing is how I met you.
School, I guess. I took a class in poetry at Cal State Long Beach, and it was Professor William Moore. Let's call him Bill. He's a psycho. Like he lives and breathes writing, and like he is also like kind of a performer too. So like when he would teach us about poetry, he was like, it was like the most important thing in the world to this person. And it's like you never get professors like that. They're there to like catch a check and then just be like, all right, so here's a thesis or whatever. But he was like, let's talk about this fucking 6-line poem about a wheelbarrow for 2 hours. And I'm like, yes, let's do that. Like, so after that, I just got really into like the art of poetry and like what it can do and what interesting moves it can make as a reader, as a writer, whatnot.
For sure.
And then I just luckily got into like a writing program after that at Cal State Long Beach as well, and just surrounded by poets who had like different tastes. Like none of us liked the same thing, which I really appreciated, because like if you're in a room full of people who like all the same things, it gets boring.
It does, for sure.
So yeah, we all had different tastes. We're like, oh, you should check out this poet, you should check out this person, yada yada yada. And yeah, then after that, they no longer became, they were no longer peers, but we were just like friends, and we just hang out and just talk about like writing and like what we were discovering, and like local poets that we were like appreciating at the time. And then
like who was it at the time?
Who was at the time? We met. So there's a poet, Douglas Kearney, who writes very experimental poetry. Who he came down to Long Beach one time to just like perform or like read his work, and like he at the time he was local. I think now he's in Minnesota. Okay. But he was just like some dude sitting next to us at a reading, and we're just like, this unassuming guy is just here to witness some poetry or whatever. Yeah. And then he's up next, and then he just like he performs the wildest shit. Like I can't explain his poetics verbally, but he does some wild stuff on the page, like just like meshing words into like images, and then performing that, like if there's a word that's like in big bold letters or whatever, he'll like scream it and then like whisper something else and then sing something else, and then it was like, oh, you could do this with poetry, that's really cool. So and then I've been in and out of bands for like years and years, and just like all kinds of music. So I'm just like, if I could combine performance with recitation of poetry, that'd be great, So I was like very influenced by like what he was doing. And there's another poet, Gabrielle Savelle, who again was local, no longer local. Opposite. She wasn't local. Now she's teaching at Cal Arts, I believe. Right. And same thing, as a performance artist, and writes from like the perspective of Black feminist ideals, and also just like everything's a poem to her. Like she has a book out of like prose and poetry, that's like she like took old emails and transformed them into like works of communication, or like how people are talked down to, or what have you. So just playing with form,
especially in the workplace, emails and stuff like that. That's exactly. Interesting. You're talking a lot about your influences like poetically and like poets, but you also mentioned that there was this influence of music into the writing. What music was influencing that writing, or what kind of was was merging that together?
Let me see. My favorite punk band ever is a band called At the Drive-In.
At the Drive-In?
At the Drive-In.
Okay.
Yeah. And when I was like 16, I would like try to write like lyrics or poetry, I guess, like the singer, and he writes some like, he will admit, just some nonsense stuff. But I think over time, I'm as of right now, my two favorite genres are like punk rock and hip hop. So there's this in a Venn diagram, like the center is this political truths,
for sure,
that I like through metaphor can be extremely powerful and can be extremely I guess tangible if you work them the right way. And I think at the time when I was getting my master's, I think that's when like Temper Butterfly came out, and that was my religion for the rest of that year. But it was like the storytelling aspect without giving like an explicit narrative, but like just using words to paint pictures and being able to create this dialogue about like identity or like mental health and whatnot. I was like, how can I do this with writing? So at the drive-in in Kendrick Lamar, I guess is the short answer.
Yeah, for sure. What at the drive-in, and I also think of like Rage Against the Machine and Public Enemy, just like even like further back. But what about those because there's so many bands, and at the end of the day, like people can say like punk is rooted in that, hip hop is rooted in that. But what specifically about those two people did you find like really, that's really like where I see my attention, where I really feel like I connected with from those two specifically?
This could sound weird to say because I kind of hate this term, but representation was, I guess, really vital with those artists, because like At the Drive-In was the first time I saw a rock band. Second time I saw a rock band that wasn't a bunch of white guys, like it wasn't like a bunch of like blonde white dudes who were like angry about something, and I was like, I understand the anger, but you're just bored, like you're just bored at home. That's why you're angry. And at the drive-in, like they had like texture hair, right, and like they like brown skin, and like they wear like they were punks, but they didn't wear like the like leather jackets or the mohawks were like they're just
and I think that's what I love about a lot of music. It's when it's converging like a bunch of these different influences into one, right? For sure.
And so like just seeing that was okay, so you people look like me. So maybe what you're angry about is what I'm angry about too, and like going back to Kendrick, I like that was around the time he started to just dress scruffier, I guess. Like he would let his beard grow out, and like he grew dreadlocks, and I was like, oh, I get this look now. Like this is coming from a place that's not like I make money or whatever. So just like the idea of like seeing an artist, and if they look like you in a space where like you don't get to see yourself a lot, you just gravitate toward it a lot more. And I mean, obviously there's a lot of like Latinx and like Black artists that are mainstream now or are doing like good things. But like those were like the first two where I was like, I need to know more about. I need to like I need this to be my identity.
For sure. No, for sure. Even when we're thinking about music, you mentioned about like previous bands who are doing that. Maybe we're thinking like Bad Brains, like Pure Hell, and stuff like that. But I wanted to go back to this idea of music and writing, where I've seen you do it before. Specifically talking about At the Drive-In. I read this piece that you had written. Here it is. It's the one where you talk about At the Drive-In and about Limp Bizkit, right?
Limp Bizkit.
I don't know if you remember this writing. It's called The Good Hair on Missed Connections in Punk.
From Apogee. That's a throwback.
But I was reading that story, and I you're talking about even earlier when you're talking about like this like back and forth happening about like the poetics and stuff like that. I also saw the way that you also presented that with those two bands, specifically at this one festival in 2001, right? Could you take me back into what was it writing that piece and what inspired that piece specifically?
Yeah, it was so what's always fascinated me about Limp Bizkit is that they should not be famous.
They're like Post Malone.
They are like 3,000 Post Malone. Where it's like you don't live this lifestyle. So in 2000, like I was like 10 years old in 2000, like whenever Limp Bizkit was blowing up, and I remember, I was 10. I was really into like WWF, so like they were all over everything. So I remember buying their albums or the CDs. Not my money, obviously, but my mom bought me those CDs.
Yeah.
And I remember I would listen to the singles, and then everything else I would genuinely feel like bored by. And at the time I was like, I'm not, when I'm older, this will make more sense or whatever.
Yeah.
But just over time, I was like, no, this is just genuinely bad. And so one thing, it's fascinating to me that they're making a comeback now. Like,
I haven't seen that.
No, like Gen Z loves Limp Bizkit.
That's crazy.
Gen Alpha loves Limp Bizkit.
That's interesting. Do you know why?
I don't know. They love. Okay, I'm basing this off of my partner's niece and nephews. They their throwback is the 2000s.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, like we gotta get baggy jeans and we gotta get like the bracelets or whatever. Like, new metal's amazing. And me and her are both like, we were there. It wasn't that good.
Do you think it kind of goes with like also this resurgence of like Deftones? Like I know they were recently like on tour, and now they're pretty big with like the new generation as well.
Yeah. And they get conflated with new metal a lot just because they came out at the same time.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I like Deftones more than a lot of new metal because they're a prettier band.
Yeah.
Whereas like Limp Bizkit's very, I don't know, like Fred Durst especially is there strikes me as what's the term, like cloud chaser or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I guess going back to like the piece too, they were a band that was like based in white guy violence and machismo, right?
Yeah.
Like they're just like, like their big songs like break stuff, right? Like, oh, I'm so angry, I don't know why I'm angry, I'm just angry. And so like that incident in 2001, for people that don't know, there's a festival in Australia called Big Day Out, which I think is still going. And at the drive-in played that show because like it was like the one time they were getting any mainstream play, but they're also part of a scene. So like in punk scenes, it's like safety is paramount to everything. Like making sure everyone feels safe there, like both like physically and mentally, and like look out for the women who are there, look out for like people who are enabled who are there. And so during their set, people were like, people were there for like Limp Bizkit and like Mudvayne and stuff. So people started like moshing like crazy and like pushing and fighting and stuff like that. And they stopped their set like a couple of times. And they're like, hey, fucking stop doing that. And the lead singer Cedric Bixler Zavella, like he admits that he used to be like much more of a hothead back then. So they played like 3 or 4 songs, and then he blew up on the crowd. He was fucking like, you're all dumbasses. You didn't learn this from your friends or going to shows. You watched MTV and you're being a poser or whatever. And then he started calling them sheep and then like bleating at them. Like he would like there's a video of this on YouTube too. Like you watch it, he's like, bah, that's you, bah. And it's so they walk off set. They walk off. They don't finish their set. And then Limp Bizkit plays a little bit after that, and they were like, "Nah, mosh, go crazy, whatever." Crazy. And then, then a girl died like during that mosh set after like they're warning everyone like, "Hey, don't do that." But Limp Bizkit was very like, "No, go ahead, mosh. Don't listen to security. Just keep going." And then, girl gets trampled to death in the mosh, right, in the mosh pit.
What does this say? What does that say about the music? Because I think a lot of the like what you just mentioned, right? Like I think. When we think of music, we might think of just like, what we hear on our headphones, but a lot of it also has to do with the culture around it, right? The space around it, who gets to be safe in it, who doesn't, who's the violence towards. But when that happens, when the music becomes from like a performance like at the drive-in, then to someone like Limp Bizkit, why do you think that happens with the music over time, especially?
It's like the short answer is capitalism. But it's like the way that music's marketed really pushes how people interact with it. And like at that time, there's a lot of new metal and a lot of violence for the sake of violence. So a lot of folks there, they didn't know what punk sensibilities were. They didn't care for safety, and like, and just unfortunate things happen. And then like Woodstock 99 is a great example of that, where like, Woodstock in the 60s, that was like a peace and love festival, right? And that just didn't translate in the late 90s for one reason or another, and it ended up being like the most violent festival ever. Like there were massive amounts of reported sexual assaults during that. Yeah. Fires were started. Like the actual festival itself was pulled apart, and like that was like the era of like the Limp Bizkit, your Kid Rocks and whatnot. And that's all. And there's a debate too about like if that's on the artist or if that's on the concert goer or whatnot. But speaking earlier about like Rage Against the Machine, I saw them once in 2011. It was like a LA Rising festival thing. Okay. And it's interesting because like they're socialists, you know, like they're exactly. Very, like there's Zapatistas, they're like fucking, and they're playing this giant festival or this giant like money grabbing festival. And I remember one dude I met in a communications class was in the pit with me, and I remember this dude was like he's a frat guy. I think it's this white frat guy. And I was like, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, I'm here to see Rage. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess this guy's down? I don't know. And then we're in the mosh pit and we're having a good time. I'm like soaked in sweat. My buddy and I, a different buddy and I, walked to our car, which is like miles away. And then as we're crossing the street, I see the guy, the frat guy. He's in a limo. He's like in a limo. He's like, hey, man, good show. And he drives off in the limo. And I'm like, oh, you don't know what Rage's songs are about. But like, that's just like the core audience is like, they see something that's cool, but they don't want to know what the subtexts are, like why they do certain, like what, people are about or whatnot. And that's why like Republican politicians love Rage Against the Machine, and they're like, "What do you mean Tom Morello is or whatever?" And I think because was it Travis Scott? What was the
Travis Scott? Yeah, a few people passed away at his show a few years ago.
Yeah, that's like that too. It was like folks wanting to be a part of something without understanding what that is.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's just the rampant thing. But like not just punk scenes or hip hop scenes, but just any people will just will see what's cool and want to like go to it without understanding it.
Exactly. Yeah. You know what? I was thinking about that earlier this week because I see a lot of the resurgence of cumbia. A lot, and I think especially in this platform, we try to highlight a lot about the cumbia culture. Yeah. And I realize that a lot of that culture kind of also gets lost with its mainstream popularity, A lot of the times we forget whether it's the good or the bad, because when I think of cumbia, I think it's a very open space where people of all genders and all identities are able to dance with each other. Yeah. But at the same time, I also think about the way that a lot of like these machista cultures are like perpetuated by these actual DJs, So there's also like this complexity within the music culture that also I feel like is lost when it goes into the mainstream or when people start appreciating it more. So I see what you mean by also not just in like specific music, but just like in all of the different music. Yeah. I think also about Playboi Carti, Playboi Carti is like one of those big rappers who like is very about like the rage and everything. But if you actually like know what Playboi Carti like is connected to, and it's Atlanta, and you know why he has certain DJ tags over and over, then you're like, oh wow, like this makes sense, right? But if you don't, then you're just there to rage, and it becomes something else.
Yeah, I had so at the tutoring center, I became a supervisor eventually, and like one student tried to turn me on to Playboi Carti, and I can't tell if this was like, I don't know, I've seen videos. I don't know. I don't know his music enough to like say this definitively, but I've seen performances of his where he's just phoning it in a little bit. Yeah. And I'm like trying to understand like what do you watch do you know of FD Signifier at all?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you seen his Playboi Carti journey?
I haven't. No, I haven't. But did he learn to appreciate it or?
Like okay, so he was he was trying, like he was like really, like, he's an old head, right? So he's like, I'm gonna try to understand Playboi Carti.
Yeah.
And like, he'll post like videos of himself listening to it, and he's just like, while the music's playing. But he eventually was like, okay, this is trying to, like, Playboi Carti's music is doing something to like rap and hip hop that's trying to transform or like evolve it.
Yes.
And it's doing it in a way that he may not understand.
Yeah.
Which I'm in that camp of like, what are we doing here? But it's doing something to the youth that's very important.
Yes.
I think, you know, and I think that's, you know, and like you said, like there's something about like just the way that he utilizes DJs or utilizes like the music itself that is, you know, a tribute to like a certain type of sound or like the Atlanta sound. And like to the untrained ear, it might be a turnoff, but like when you're actually invested in like knowing these artists and know what they're about and like how they go about their music, then it becomes a beautiful thing no matter what.
Yeah, but you know, I don't know if you were ever into like reading like music blogs growing up and stuff, but there was this I think I heard it from I forgot his name, but he's from Genius. He used to work at Genius. I'm going to link his stuff in this episode. But what he was saying is that music now is very kind of disconnected to the past, you know? So a lot of the times, like you were talking about, like, you know, there's a lot of things that are connected to that the artist may signal, but we don't know because there's no contextualization to it, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that happens a lot even with like writing and with the music that you try to connect to in your writing? Do you try to bring that contextualization, I would say?
I think it's like folks are like in the writing world, folks are like just naturally prone to, you know, lean on the past or lean on like histories to, I guess, contextualize their work or to, I don't know, like getting the. I'm at the end of my PhD program, so I'm like trying my best to be nice about it. But a lot of folks who write in these spaces, especially, tend to be very loud about like histories or very loud about, you know, this is this writing is a tribute to I don't know, James Baldwin's like Stranger in the Village or whatever, and it's in the opposite realm of like music, I guess, where it's so on like hard on sleeve, like this is what I am paying tribute to, that it can kind of erase the author to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But I think I think it's always important. Like no one's that original.
Yeah.
You know, like no one is ever like, oh, I made something brand new. Like, no, you didn't. This is one thing I get not shit for, but I've labeled this book as an anti-memoir.
Yes.
In like whatever thing. There's no reason for that. I was just like, I'm trying to sell this book. I need something kitschy, you know. I need something that's gonna like capture people's attention. And so I just wrote like, oh, and it's fiction. It's like auto fiction, which means like, you know, it's based on real life, but it's fictionalized. And I wrote Anti-Memoir because I was like, this sounds cool. You know? But people, like some reviews I've seen and people who like ask me about the book are like, oh, so like what, like how do you know, transform the anti-memoir, that this how do you utilize this term that you made up? I'm like, I didn't make it up. Like it's I actually Googled, and there's like dating back to like the early 1900s, like some French dude came up with the term, but it means something different to him. And it's like the same kind of transformation of like what actually happened in someone's life into a fictionalized story, but he does it in a way that's more historically based or like pulling from histories. And I'm just like, I just don't want to name this person. I don't want to get sued. So I'm just going to change some things.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's kind of impossible to not, I think it's impossible to divorce history from like the current arts, you know, like I feel like, so, I'm also a huge like Tyler the Creator fan now. Right. I used to not like him for a while.
I mean, it was different for sure.
Yeah,
back then.
but like, so he I think in November he released Chromacopia,
Yeah.
Chromacopia, and he'll post on like Twitter like, oh, have you guys listened to like track 6 yet? Because on at the 26-second mark, like these horns come in, and like I was just listening to like a lot of like the Isley Brothers or whatever, and like he's like excited about like this is where I got this part of music from. I'm really excited that like this whole song is dedicated to like Atlanta marching bands, and I really wanted to hear how like these specific marching bands could play this kind of song and And,
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
I feel like people like him are trying their best to make sure that those histories don't get lost, right?
Yeah,
like in
for
their.
sure.
But yeah, I know what you're saying though. Like people. Also, as a teacher now, I'm like, people don't care about where things come from. It's disheartening.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, going to your book, An Anti-Memoir, you're from Southgate?
I am.
Right on. Southgate. So what inspired the book, and why now? Because I've read that you've been working on this for 3.5 years, or you were working on it for 3 years.
Yeah, it's like on and off too. So it's full of stories that, and it's hard to even say stories because like there's at least 3 pieces in there that are just straight up like an essay or like nonfiction. But I was trying to map growing up in Southgate and parts about it that spoke to why I'm such an ornery person now. But I was just very interested in like going back to certain parts of my life that felt like pivotal but frightening. And because of that fear, I was very concerned about, I want to write about this specific person, but I want to write about like how much, I guess, vitriol I had against this person at the time. But now they're not so bad. So like, how do I juggle that? And so I ended up writing a bunch of pieces about like these various things in life that affected me negatively, but I wanted to like amplify that negativity so that I could unearth joy out of it, if that makes any sense.
In what way? How? I see what you're saying, but I do kind of want to know more about that.
Yeah, it's so. I think I could explain this before talking about a specific piece, but it's the idea of like, what's that thing called when like miners, like they'd look for gold and like they would they scoop up dirt or water,
and then they'd like try to like filter.
Yeah, there's a word for it, but I forgot what it is. But it's just a lot of that. It's a lot of like what are the darkest moments of like either my life or like experiences I've had that felt like really bad. What's the worst that could have happened with that event, and what did I get out of it? Like what can people like get out of it? And so I'll go into a specific piece then. Like there's one story in here about, I'll just say the character. The character is reflecting on like high school and like some very racist Mexican friends who are like very machista, very like into like patriarchal like things and whatnot. And I think I love referencing the story because like the end is like the guy gets like the main racist dude gets stabbed in the dick. But it's a reflection of like, how we understand ourselves through like outdated traditions, and how we understand ourselves through like, why do we have to be this misogynist or this racist? Like where are we learning this from? And can we be better after acknowledging it, right? And after being stabbed in the dick. And then so it's like through a lot of like, these characters like projecting these awful ideas onto one another, projecting these like racist ideas onto another, these misogynist things onto one another, and like being able to like get out from underneath those ideals. Like that's that little bit of gold, right? Like knowing that like this didn't destroy you,
right,
in the end.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of that. It's a lot of like, yeah, these bad things happen, but in the end, like, here's what we did. Here are the good things
Yeah.
that transformed you and that helped you progress as a person in ways that others might not be able to be afforded, you know?
For sure, for sure. You know, I was talking with a friend earlier. I was actually talking with Moy earlier about, like, you know, the complexity that goes into music, and like how a lot of the musicians kind of there's a lot of history to them, right? Like, even when we're talking about like Radiohead, you know, there's a lot that goes with Radiohead.
A lot.
But sometimes it's easy to be like to feel hopeless in this time, you know. It's easy to be like, damn, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
But I think it takes work and effort for sure to be like, you know what, there are things that we can do, and there's things that we've been through and that we come out of.
Yeah.
And we can use that to energize, you know, to push forward and really, you know, energize to do the change that we want to see. So I want to ask you, as you finish writing the book and you reflect back on it, what is it that you feel that you've, you know, seen, grown, you know, learned about yourself?
That I need to be more patient. That's what I learned about myself. Because let me tell you, I hated this book up until like 3 months ago.
Okay.
Because it's a publishing thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, this got picked up in October of 2021, and
yeah, 3 years.
That's a long time.
4 years.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, and it had been done by that time. It wasn't like,
wow. Okay.
Here's a proposal. It's like, no, here's my whole thing. And that went through so many tweaks and drafts after that, because like the publishers or like the editors, like extremely helpful people, you know. But it evolved so much that I started to lose what I even wanted to do with the book, right? Like draft 1, they had said, "Oh, try X, Y, and Z." I'm like, "Okay, here's X, Y, and Z." Draft 2, "Well, try A, B, and C." I'm like, "Okay, here's A, B, and C." And then draft 3, "Actually, don't do X, Y, and Z." I'm like, "But I did X, Y, and Z. You told me to do X, Y, and Z." And it started to like be less my book and more of a creation of what the publisher wanted. But around like draft 5 or 6, I started to see what they were seeing and how like our collective vision was trying to create this book that was the most me, I guess. And so I hated it for a while, because like I was like, I've read this book like 1,000 times. Can this stop being a book? And also, like, I'm in a writing program right now, so I'm like writing new stuff, and I'm like, I want to just get this new stuff out. Like, why am I still worried about this old stuff? And what I forget is, you know, when you publish a book, people are going to read it for the first time.
Yeah.
You know, like all my friends who like don't read stuff, they're like, "Hey, I love chapter like 7 or whatever." I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know you read." And like that, I wasn't like, I didn't think about that too. It was like, you know, I was like, I want to get this book out and like have it published and just be out in the world. But I was too impatient to think like, oh, and then once it's actually out, I can say I put this many hours into it. I put this much of my blood, sweat, and tears into it, and you know, people are going to read. They're not reading drafts 1 through 7. They're reading the final draft.
Yeah,
and you know that's been cool. That's made me like not hate the book after some time. You know,
for sure. Because it's one thing to put out the first draft. You're like, as long as it's out there.
Yeah.
But once you have so many revisions, it's like, hey, I did the best I could. It is what it is. You know. Yeah. For sure. I do want to talk a little bit about what some chapters in the book, and some things that I've read, some experts that I read from that. So I know the first chapter is on your experience in Podunk, Oregon.
Podunk, a podunk town in Oregon. Yeah, it was. Oh my God, it's Bend, Oregon. I believe was the city. Bend or Bent? Bend, Oregon.
Bend, Oregon.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Podunk is just like a nowhere town. It's just
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I feel like you know, you talk about this incident with your band. Well, it's, you know, fictional.
Yeah, right.
It's fictional. But what made you want to start the book with that specific chapter?
It was based on our to this day our best show that we ever played. and it was like in a nowhere town in Oregon, where we played like this pizza parlor, and like there were a ton of people there.
Yeah.
It was like a full room, and
Yeah.
we had never experienced that. We were like used to like.
Had y'all been to Oregon before, or was that like the first time that y'all?
That was my first time in that part of Oregon. Like I'd been to Portland.
Yeah.
But yeah, our drummer had a friend out there who just like who
Ooh.
lived in a barn. But yeah, it was like we played one show out there, and it was fun. And I was like, I don't want to lose this feeling, but we still had like some like. It didn't happen like during that show, but like we had a cluster of shows around that particular one where like we had incidents happen where like we played this spot in Anaheim that sucked, and our drummer had an incident with someone who like used like the N-word around him, and he exploded on that person. And so like all these like little moments happened around this one show, and I was like trying my best to be like, no, but this show was good. This show was so good. I can't let go of the show. And so I want to start off the book with that, because that was kind of a launching pad for all the rest of the pieces, where it's like I said before, like it's trying to find that one bit of joy in this cluster of negativity.
Yeah.
And sometimes the negativity wins out, sometimes the joy wins out, but it's still like it's a balance that needs to be like struck in.
Yeah, for sure. And does that kind of play with the cover as well?
Kind of, yeah. The cover is actually us playing, like the real life band playing, and that from my 30th birthday show from like from years ago, where like we're playing in a friend's garage, and like all of my friends were there, and like one friend like took that photo, and I was like, this is cool. Like this is us, our most visceral existence. So
yeah, for sure. So if you check out the book, there's all these things happening all at once, but at the end of the day, I think that also just is real, right? Because that's real. That's like all of these things happening at the same time, you know. You experience joy, sadness, anger, frustration, difficulty, all within a day.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's what makes a book really real to what it is, even though if it's fiction, even if it's fiction. So I could definitely appreciate that as well, for sure. Another thing I want to bring up about the book is that and I read this in a review, but they mentioned this conversation with different scholars within the book. One of them specifically that I've read before, which is Alan Palez Lopez. But why was it important for you to include that conversation with other scholars that are also, you know, talking about different things?
Yeah. So again, like being in the PhD program, I'm going to try to be nice about this. There is the idea that if you are getting your doctorate, you are more of an expert on something than someone else, right? Like that's the gist of it.
Yeah.
But what gets lost a lot is the conversations that are being held within those academic spaces are conversations that people outside of those spaces should be having too, right? Like, especially if you're an ethnic studies scholar, like white guy number 8 in the college doesn't care about, you know, what your your ideas on like xenophobia or racism mean as much as, you know, like an immigrant who goes through that kind of stuff, or like, you know, like black youths who are affected by certain things. And like I've always like reading the things I have to read for the program. I'm like, why doesn't the community, you know, get to read this? You know, why is the language so elevated that they are not, you know, allowed to participate in these conversations, because these are their conversations. So I found it very important to like play with like certain critical theory and like you know, like ideas within the confines of like those chapters, especially like that particular one that's like at a party, and like, you know, suddenly a scholar's talking to like some drunk dude, and that's like, it's it's because like what the scholar has to say is what that conversation in the middle of a living room is saying. It's why there's certain discomforts about mixed race identity, or why internalized racism is a very prevalent thing among folks our age, or just among people generally. And it's like if you write in a book that only like a white scholar is going to read, it's not going to help as much as if we have these conversations with our community, with our people. So I figure like mixing those things in one another, it forces the reader to think, oh, why this Algerian scholar from the 19th century or 20th century, like why is he in conversation with this person who's talking about the Legend of Zelda, and like there was a connection there. So.
Yeah, for sure, most definitely. When people read this book, I feel like I have to ask I don't have to ask you this question, but I do want to ask you this question.
You have to ask,
yes. Yeah. Well, what do you hope people take from it? What do you hope people take from your book?
I just hope they don't hate it. I don't know. I hope that whoever reads this can just enjoy the book as it is. And so a big issue I had was with the genre was I don't know, to this moment I can't tell you what genre it is. Like I say fiction because it says fiction on the back.
Yeah.
But like I said, there's like nonfiction in there. There's like some poetry in there, and like obviously fiction and whatnot. And I've always been bothered by people who are like, oh, I don't read novels. I only read like essay collections, or like, oh, I don't read poetry. I only read like short stories or whatever. And I'm like, well, fuck you, man. There's no genre here. You got to read it. Like, how do you feel about it? So I just hope that people will like just accept it as it is, and just like read, like just read the words, and like what do you take out of the words? Because I'm not gonna be able to hold your hand when you're reading it. So like, what do you take from it? And that's excites me. People even pronounce the title of the book differently every time I talk to people. So it's like I'm just having fun fucking with people with this book.
Hey, one last question. What role do you think music plays in this current moment?
I don't know anymore. It's like I don't know. You hear talks of, or at least I heard talks of like, oh, like Trump's in office again, so punk's gonna come back because we're be angrier and whatever. And I'm like, we've been angry. Like we need more than art. But I think it's still important to have like the arts and like music. I think it's important to have music say something. That you hear conversations of like, oh, stick to music because you're not a politician or whatever. I'm like, no, we're all responsible
for sure.
And especially if you have a spotlight, if you have a platform, you're responsible
for sure. Yeah, for sure. And that's why we want to highlight this book. That radio, Ponk, Marcus Clayton. Thank you so much for coming through. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.